Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Willem. Now, let's shift our focus looking into the future. What is our game plan? What have we been working on? What's the progress that we have made? And what can you expect from Mercedes-Benz in these next coming years? That's what I would like to talk to you today about, together with Harold and Marcus. And it comes down really to 4 core messages. These are the takeaways from today. Number 1, we have this unique and iconic brand. It's a certain recipe that makes a Mercedes-Benz a Mercedes-Benz. And in this next phase of our transformation and evolution into the future, what we have done is we have taken this recipe and we have distilled it one more time to make Mercedes even more Mercedes. That's a segue into the second point. We're embarking on the biggest tech, innovation, and product launch offensive in the company's history. So it will be a very busy 3 years coming, with a refined recipe turning into product and turning into technology, class-leading technology. Even if we love cars, and it's a lot about cars, we spend a lot of time here in Sindelfingen, and we look at styling, and we test drive, and so on. Everybody in this room, and especially the audience that is in this room, knows you cannot have innovation strength if you don't have financial strength. So financial strength equals innovation strength. Financial strength equals return of capital to shareholders. That is why we will leave no stone unturned in the challenging macro and market environment that we're in to look at our complete business model and every single cost category, investment category, to make sure that we have the most efficient operations that we can have. Not the easy way out. Just cut your R&D spend and your CapEx spend. You can very, very, very quickly improve your short-term financial performance if you would do that. But Mercedes-Benz has always been a long-term thinking company. So we're not going to eat our seed. We're going to use our seed to create future exciting products and returns to our investors. But at the same time, we will double down on efficiency. That is the third message I want you to take with you today. And last but not least, this is a Capital Markets Day. We're talking to our investors. Many of our investors are here. We want to make sure that you have a good return on investment. Harold showed us the numbers from 2024, a healthy dividend, also a good share buyback program. We want to continue our capital allocation policy to be investor friendly. I could almost stop the day there and say, that's it. Let's now go out on the test track and drive some cars. And I know for those of you who are in the room, you're ready for that and you will get to that. But let's double click and go in a little bit more deep. But those are the 4 messages. Let's start with the recipe. If you work at Mercedes-Benz or you have been associated with Mercedes-Benz for a longer period of time, that recipe is like in your genes. If you work in R&D, you know what a Mercedes is. But sometimes it is important to stand back and look at what are the ingredients and how do you need to maybe refine those ingredients. So you either meet or exceed the expectations of your customers. It's about them. What did they get? What do they buy when they buy the 3-pointed star? And how are we going to make that experience even better and that technological substance even deeper? Yes, if you would wake me at 3 o'clock at night and say, what is this? Yes, of course, it's class-leading safety. It's the way it rides and drives, that comfort. Even if you're blindfolded, you know you're in a Mercedes. Of course, the quality, the longevity of the product, it's something that you buy to keep. Yeah, I think residual values on our classic cars are amongst the highest in the world, so we have many of those icons. When we talk about intelligence, it's not tech for the sake of tech, it's tech for the sake of you. We invented the assistance systems to make you more safe. Now it's about safety and convenience. We don't put a big screen into the cars just because it's a flashy screen. We're thinking about what's in it for you. What can you do with that? Is it entertainment? Is it actually working in the car? What is it? And a timeless elegance, a design carrying Mercedes-Benz into the future. Design doesn't stand still. There is a zeitgeist to modern luxury. You have to keep on reinventing it. And we will show you that today. For those of you who are part of the program, kind of the final event today will be a sneak preview of upcoming models in 26 and 27. I mentioned safety. Some people might not think about this when they purchase the car, because they purchase the car with the eyes. Oh, it looks beautiful, I want it. Absolutely latest when you start a family is when you look at this thing here. It's not about a box-ticking exercise. Yes, our engineers are proud that if they have the highest score of anybody in the class in 2024, in this case in Euro NCAP, fine, you take that little gold star, put it on your exam paper, and you feel good about yourself. But it's not the thing. In R&D at Mercedes, we say 1 star is enough, the Mercedes-Benz star. 75 plus years of refining this part of the recipe, having had over decades hundreds of accidents forensically investigated and translating it into engineering solutions that keeps you safe. This is a core value of the Mercedes-Benz brand, and I think one of the main reasons you should look at when you buy a car, that is Mercedes-Benz, and that recipe continues. I talked about the ride and drive. Yeah, here is a pre-production car of the new CLA, and it's like a calling card for a whole host of vehicles that are coming here in the next few years. The very first time I stepped into this car, and Marcus had driven it, the prototype, before he goes like, Ola, I don't want to promise too much, but you're going to be excited and all that and the other. My very first feeling was not thinking about the class-leading electric drivetrain or all the ADAS stuff and all of that. It was not my first thought. My very first thought was, I'm not sitting in a CLA, I'm actually sitting in a car that is 1 class up, a C-class. The ride and drive, the solidity of it, the performance of it felt like a more adult car. That feeling of comfort, of safety, performance, yeah, if you want to take it to the track, yeah, maybe you can take a Mercedes to the track. I wouldn't advise you to do that. I would go to our friends in Affalterbach at AMG. That's where you get race technology for the road. But it is this feeling of effortlessness. Inside the car, anybody who has the privilege of sitting in the back of an S-Class, or even better, a Maybach S-Class, from time to time I do this. At the moment, my company car is an EQS SUV Maybach. It is so insanely quiet and serene that when I ride in the morning with my driver, I'm even tempted to strike up a conversation with him. But I don't want to waste the time, so I use it to do my emails and inform myself about what's going on. Here's an example where we have upped the game in the EQS. Yes, a very aerodynamically shaped car, class-leading aerodynamics, hence the best range in its class. But with the executive seating now in the EQS, you get almost the S-Class combustion feeling. On the digital side, MB.OS, and I don't want to steal your thunder, Marcus, I'll leave most of this to you, and I just want to say one thing. It's about you. It's not about the tech. It's about what the tech can do for you. I'll leave it at that. And then, with regard to styling, and we'll come back to this several times today, we are readying the next generation of styling. For those of you who will see the presentation, you will see it. But there needs to be a level of timelessness to it, so that when you look back 20, 30, 40 years later and you see it, of course cars will look different in the future, but you look back and you go, the proportions are right, the lines are right, it just feels right. Even if you know nothing about cars, subliminally, it needs to feel right. So that's the recipe. But the recipe is not just the product. I'm the first to admit that we are a product-centric company. Quite often you talk to consultants, you need to be customer-centric. Yeah. Yes, you are customer-centric, but we come in our DNA from the product side and then to the customer. But we're working very intensively on the customer side as well. Today we're in a building that we call the Center of Excellence. If you know the name Raimund Dornborg, and sorry Raimund for outing you now in front of a very large audience here in the world. If you know this name within the Mercedes-Benz family, you know you've made it. Raimund is the guy who runs this place. This is the place for the very best Mercedes customers. They come here and they spend hours here looking at options from our manufacturer. And for those of you who saw the presentation of AMG yesterday, you saw that we're kind of increasing the level of manufacturer content in our vehicles on the upper end. We are making that also a strategic imperative. In a building only 5 minutes away from here, we have more or less cleared a whole part of the factory and turned it into a manufacturer production. Yes, it's craftsmanship. Yes, it's expensive. But yes, if you buy a tailor-made suit on Savile Row, you expect to pay maybe a little bit more than if you buy a pret-à-porter in one of the department stores. And that is what manufacture is all about. So we will continue to build the individualization for Mercedes-Benz customers, not just here, but also make it more available and more convenient for customers around the world to tap into it. Speaking of customers, we have the product, we have the individualization of product. What about the other touch points? Maybe I should have shown a picture of our service network around the world. There is no premium luxury brand that has a broader and stronger service network than Mercedes-Benz around the world. It's actually one of our assets, and it's also an asset in the intense competition with new entrants into the market. And yes, the service level of spare parts is extremely high at Mercedes-Benz. Usually you don't have to wait. If you have to wait, I'm sure the customer says, hello, I'm waiting, and we will respond quickly to it. So all of those mechanisms in the background, the ingredients is for a successful automotive company. They're relevant, and we're working on them. But we're also trying to improve every single touch point vis-a-vis the customer to make the experience for the customer even better. On the left-hand side, you see an example of an almost insane Mercedes showroom invested by one of our private investors that says, I believe in this brand. I've seen what you have in the product portfolio. I'm going to put $100 million plus into a facility that is almost like a place for pilgrimage for Mercedes fans. The digital side, little anecdote from the past. Some years ago, my dad or my parents who live in Sweden said, want to buy a Mercedes? Yes, they drive Mercedes. And I said, let me help you configure the car. Yeah? In this case, it was an E-Class. And I sat down with my dad to configure the car. I pretended with him as if I had everything under control, but it felt a little bit like I needed a PhD degree to understand all the combinations that I could configure. Good thought, execution maybe not perfect. The marketing and sales team has spent a tremendous amount of time to make the digital journey not only seamless into the physical journey, but much more convenient, much more easier to access. And yes, you can even buy a car online. Most people don't do that because it's a very big purchase, but you can do it if you want to. So the digital side of it is also important. We will continue to invest in the digital customer experience. Last but not least on this slide, if you see this artifact, it's even better than knowing Raimund Dornborg. If you get it in this Silver Arrows program that we're launching this year, starting here in Germany and then going into different markets, if you have this artifact, you are actually recognized as one of the best customers in the Mercedes-Benz family. Asterisk, you will have to spend quite a bit of money to get one. But it's not about the money, it's about being part of a family. So on the very top end of our portfolio, we want to create a unique family for those customers and offer them experiences above and beyond the normal stuff. A little bit money can't buy type of things as well, and access to information and other things that you just don't get as a normal person. A talked about this launch program. Okay, so what is it? Yeah, what is coming? Where are the cars? Yeah, we have a very good product portfolio now. I think we have more than 40 different models. Many of them are new. They're very successful. The new E-Class is really cleaning house, Marcus. But now it's like we're going to reskin the whole portfolio here in the next 3 years and into 2028 as well. But the period starting middle of this year to end of 27 is going to be particularly intense. I mentioned styling. And styling is, as I said, kind of a zeitgeist thing. Modern luxury doesn't stand still. You reinvent luxury all the time. If you go into an old apartment in Paris, a beautiful old apartment that was built 100 years ago, it's beautiful. But if you would build it today, it would not look the same. You have to evolve this and you have to look into the future. And starting next year in 2026, we're going to kind of enter the next era of the design language. What has guided us here? When I was a kid, I grew up in Malmö in the south of Sweden. Most families back then, let's say in the 70s, maybe early 80s, they drove Volvo or Saab. If there was somebody in the neighborhood that had a Mercedes, and maybe that was a little bit more unusual there than if I had grown up here in Germany, I guarantee you that every single kid on the street knew who that was. And the symbol of it, I pulled out a grill from the past with this honeycomb pattern. It's like even if you see it in your indirect sight, you go, that's a Mercedes. I talked about distilling the recipe. The styling is also part of the recipe. The technical functionality, the packaging, how you sit, and all those other things, of course, no compromises there, but it's part of the recipe. So it's almost like we have done a soul search and go back into what is the Mercedes soul, design-wise, but carry that into the future. And that will start in 2026 and be the design gradually for all models of Mercedes-Benz, regardless if they are BEVs or ICE vehicles. So let's talk about the vehicles. Of course, I cannot in this public domain show what's behind the curtain here on every one of them. But look at this picture. You know, we sort our world when we think about how our portfolio is built up, top end. Yeah, the AMGs, the Maybachs, the Gs, the S-Class, the GLS, that kind of family. Core, where we have the E-Class and the C-Class and the GLCs and the GLE. And entry, the new MMA market architecture, where the CLA is, where the GLA is, GLB, and so on. I don't know if I've even counted, but it's probably more than 25 items on this list. For the investor, you can see that most of those are actually sitting on the top end. Some of them are, of course, derivatives of core models that AMG does. That's what they do. Some of them are unique AMG models. In the core side, and I think this is crucially important, especially for the BEV take rate that we expect to start growing once we have broadened our portfolio, launched this family. The CLA itself today is actually a niche vehicle in our sales. What about why all the fuss? It's because it starts. It's kind of the first domino that falls in a whole host of cars. But you can also see here, and this is something that we told you more than a year ago, decided at the end of 2023, as we could see that transformation is going to take longer. It's going to be more heterogeneous. We had already made the decision to make sure that we have the ICE portfolio updated for the latest emissions and all the other refinements that we're doing to that. So you see quite a balanced picture here between BEV and ICE. Great news for the customer. All of the above, everything is available well into the 30s from Mercedes-Benz. A challenge for the financial controller, for the engineer. How do you create the modular strategy so you can actually afford this? I will let Marcus and Harold do the heavy lifting on explaining how that's possible, but I think we have also made that recipe work for us for the next few years. Okay, the CLA. the first kind of showing of this car was 2 years ago, or a little less than 2 years ago, at the International Auto Show in Munich. We made some promises. You show a vision car, it's going to have good range and class-leading efficiency, and you're going to charge almost as fast as you can fuel. It will have built-in supercomputers. Every single Mercedes from this point forward is going to have supercomputers. It's going to have all the sensor sets. So you have the maximum, let's say, compute and hardware genes already in this car and every other car for any ADAS level that your software people are able to dream up. I mean, it's the whole package. Are we going to keep the promise that we made in Munich 2 years ago? Answer is yes, and then some. Now, the world premiere of this car is about 4 weeks from now at another event. So I'm going to stop there, otherwise we don't have to have that event. And then we want to launch it by the summer. And you should not take out victory before you have finished the game. So pressure on you, Marcus, and the team to now, I don't know, climb the Hillary steps and get up onto the summit and make sure that we finish the work, so we enter with a high-quality Mercedes product. But it's in the making. But more important is actually this car. So I would suggest that you show up in Munich again this year, because this car is just behind that car. This is the first car on the so-called MB.EA architecture. It is the all-new electric GLC. And yes, that will be the main show. Spoiler alert, come people, you can't stop me. I'm live on stage. It will be in Munich, and we will show you what that MB.EA family is going to look like. And needless to say, if this car has pretty good technical stats, that car is also going to have pretty good technical stats. And here's where the modular strategy also comes into play. That what we really have done is we have developed two platforms. One is a powertrain platform, and the other one is an operating system platform. And when you have those platforms, I'm going to call them technology platforms, you can then apply them to different vehicles, and they go across many vehicles. Also next year, another important car, GLE or car family, GLE, GLS, super popular, quite margin strong. Maybe you will say something about that, Harold. That gets a complete remake next year as well, including an even longer wheelbase version for the Chinese market. And it would be a bit strange, right, if you launch all this space-age tech in the BEVs, but you would leave kind of the ICE doing their thing. You can't do that. So you take the tech from this and you put it into this. So we will proliferate the tech in terms of ADAS, in terms of infotainment and all those different things that are relevant to the customers, from BEV to ICE. The S-Class. The S-Class. The pinnacle of automotive engineering, our flagship car, gets a facelift next year. A normal facelift is you update the tech a bit, you do something to the optics, ready to go. This facelift is different, spending-wise, and of course, we don't have targets to spend more money, but spending-wise, we're spending considerably more on the facelift of the next S-Class than we would normally do. Because it would be a little bit odd, right, if your calling card entry product into the portfolio in some domains technologically would be hierarchically above the S-Class. That's not how it works at Mercedes. So the S-Class gets the full Monty, and will also get this tech, and also get quite the comprehensive design update along the lines of the very successful new E-Class that we launched only a year ago, to create some kind of a coherence within that family. Speaking about the E-Class, we have an E-Class, we have an EQE. They're both good, they're different. The new combustion E-Class is, in most markets, class leading. China really hit the spot. Last time I was in China, I talked to our head of digital development there. I was driving some of the ADAS functions, I was looking at the automated parking, and I was looking at the latest version of our integrated AMAP navigation. I said, "Wow, that's really, really, really good." I would kind of like to have that in Germany. Obviously, you know, we have different providers around the world. One of the reasons why we teamed up with Google now for this generation and so on. And he said, yeah, he's getting kind of calls from some of the Chinese attackers that are now looking at the navigation system in the new E-Class and going, what the hell have those guys done? So I think we also need to blow a hole a little bit in the myth that you have to be a startup company to understand what digital experience is about. No, you don't. You can also be an incumbent. And it's absolutely our ambition to be at the forefront of digital experience in any market, and the toughest market is the Chinese market. Now we have that E-Class, we have the EQE. But in 2027 we're going to launch the new electric E-Class. And it will be in every dimension as good or better than the combustion E-Class. No compromise. As good or better than the combustion E-Class. No compromise on size, seating, anything like that. Of course, again, tech galore in terms of e-drivetrain and all that. You can take that more or less for granted. But it will represent something totally different for us in that segment in about 2 years from now. Yes, you will see a design model of that later this afternoon if you're part of the group that is here in the room. Tech. I'm not going to give your presentation, Marcus. MB.OS, we're in the driver's seat. We're the architects. Marcus will do the rest. ADAS, we invented it, 30 years ago. We want to stay on the forefront. For those of you who are lucky drivers of an S-Class or an EQS in Germany, actually taking it to 95 kilometers an hour, even though you can drive in some places 200 kilometers an hour on the German autobahns. But now this is really starting to work. You put yourself in the right lane and you literally have time for yourself and you trot along at 95 kilometers an hour, which is decent, while maybe you're doing something else. Maybe you want to make a call and concentrate on the call. Maybe you want to check your text messages, whatever it is what you want to do. It's really starting to come together. And yes, but Marco will dive into it. We will launch this car in China with level 2++. And yes, we were the first company, again, that got a level 4 approval testing in China. Sustainability and decarbonization. Even though the political landscape is shifting and changing, the road to decarbonization is something that we must do as a world, as an industry, and as a company. We define that through our ambition that by the end of the next decade, we want to be net carbon neutral. And yes, of course, it's about the electric car, but it's not just about the product. It's about the supply chain, our own operations, obviously the product, but also the product in use. In every one of those verticals, we are making progress and will diligently continue to drive towards that goal, even though the EV take rate obviously is not a straight line, it will just happen automatically. It maybe takes a little bit longer, but we're on that journey. So it's not a surprise that our goal is to comply with CO2 regulations, also here in Europe. Harold, you mentioned a little bit potential burden in 2025. So if you dissect the numbers of Mercedes-Benz cars, clearly we met the target in 2024. That was a foregone conclusion. In 2025, Harold suggested it could be a challenge. Why is it a challenge? Because we have a hugely successful van division, and if you register a van as a passenger car in Europe, it counts against your passenger car fleet. If you have seen a van, it's a very big boxy thing. Usually more people ride in it, so per person, probably the CO2 footprint is lower, but in the calculation per car, it's higher. That is a segment that is not yet on the level of electrification compared to passenger cars. With the Van EA starting next year, we're going to try to make a dent there. But that alone, I would say, burdens our average on the passenger cars by maybe up to 10 grams. It depends on how many we sell. Without that, solving that math problem given by the teacher would be a hell of a lot easier. And maybe the regulator did not think in that fine granularity when the regulation was written. So be it. I think the best way to negotiate, let's say, the coming period is to do this in a thoughtful way. Through our smart joint venture together with Geely, actually we were already in a pool. Yeah, they own Volvo and Polestar. That pool is now Volvo, Polestar and Smart. We're in it. So we can take advantage of that at a lower cost than if penalties would have to be paid. I think that's a rational economical decision. But I want to make clear what our intent is. Once we have launched all these products, which happens here through the next 24, 30, 36 months, we want to run up our EV share and naturally be compliant. That is our goal. Again, Marcus, you will talk about these drivetrains, and we have them both, next gen, all bells and whistles, e-drivetrain, but also completely refreshed combustion portfolio starting next year. Flexibility. All the plants are more or less flexible already. Thank goodness we did that. That's one of the benefits from the first kind of generation, first chapter of transformation. But it's also about the product. Why should the customer expect something less in either category, BEV or ICE? So guiding principle, back to you, Marcus, a guiding principle would be everything that you have learned as a customer, that you've learned to appreciate. Let's make sure that we protect that appreciation in every vehicle that we put on the road from this point forward, including the BEVs. Factories are flexible, but supply chain management is also going to be unbelievably important because, you know, one level down or one level up in the upstream, you have to manage the percentages between the ICE drivetrains and the EV drivetrains, even if your assembly plant can build both. If you are an incumbent and established manufacturer, that is a challenge that everybody has. I think we have laid the groundwork for this. We're pretty good at it. But I also want to send a message here. I said before that on the van side, we made an adjustment yesterday to our production network through selling the Argentinian plant. Better fixed cost utilization of that plant going forward. If we need to take steps to adjust the suit to fit the body, we'll take steps to make the suit fit the body. Harold, I think you will talk about that as well. And next level performance, it's kind of your chapter, Harold, so I'll try to go quickly through this. Just want to say a few things. Sometimes I read what is written and you go like, have they actually understood what's going on? Let me say something about direct sales, and I will use it with one example. A few weeks ago, I visited the most significant market in Europe, Sweden, Denmark. It was a joke, but I was in my home country, and it is an important market for us. We're market leaders in Sweden and Denmark, by the way, in the segment. And I was actually there to renew my passport, but I said, if I'm there anyway, let's meet the team and see what's going on. And on the day, there was a dealer board meeting. So I met with the dealer board to discuss with them. Sweden, as some of you know, was actually the very first market that we turned toward direct sales back in 2018. The first little baby steps, we didn't really know. You have seen the PowerPoint slide. Does it really work? And I'm the first to admit that even though I'd left marketing and sales at the time, Britta, who took over from me, when she tried to convince some of those Swedish dealers to jump into direct sales, and it's not in the nature of an entrepreneur to kind of give up some entrepreneurial freedom, the first response was not positive. And she called me and said, Ola, you need to go to Sweden and talk sense into these guys. So I went to Sweden, tried to talk sense into them, And I threw 10 arguments at them why we should do it. They threw 5 arguments at me why we should not do it. And it ended with one of those, maybe that's on Vogue now, negotiation strategies where I said, whether you like it or not, we're going to do this. And we did. Some of these dealers I know personally for many, many years. And I sat there in front of them. Of course, if I come, they're not going to be impolite. But even Swedes that are usually nice people, between Swedes we can talk hard talk as well. Every single one of those dealers in the room said, you were right, we were wrong. This was a good step. Why? Sell the product, don't sell the price. That's the number one thing. Number two, their risk profile changes. And if you do this right as an agent, dealer, you have a different risk-adjusted business model. But I don't need to explain to a bunch of investors, analysts, that risk-adjusted return on capital is the whole name of the game, right? And they have ended up in a healthy situation. Customer satisfaction has gone up. In a recent study last year where you measure pretty much every single KPI, Mercedes scored the highest. Allocation of product is done in a more efficient way because you centrally control your market stock. Maybe easier in a smaller, geographically big but smaller market like Mercedes-Benz. So it's coming together. You got to have IT systems that work. It's not easy to do it. And in the beginning, you struggle. And you cannot have 2 models going at the same time in a market. Forget that. You don't drive on the right-hand side of the road and the left-hand side of the road at the same time. It's just not going to work. So should you embark on this endeavor, you got to go all in. So in the markets where this is possible, mainly Europe and overseas, we're going all in and we're going to continue doing it. China. Could spend the whole day on China. How do we win in China? The most intense market in the world, with 100+ companies vying for the new energy vehicle market. Subdued consumer sentiment and not the same dynamism in the economy that we had up until COVID. Here, it's about the fundamentals. Make cars that the Chinese customers want. Make sure that your tech is on the highest level of what they expect. Make sure that the packaging is right. Make sure that the Mercedes-ness is right, so you differentiate yourself from the 100 new ones that are also, many of them, pretty good, but look kind of the same. And then the other thing you have to do is you have to lower your cost structure. So we must, over these next few years, localize even more in China, do more in China for China, use China more as an R&D base, tap into the talent pool there, tap into the innovation pool there. And all of you know, they are strong. It's a formidable competitive landscape. You got to be, China has to be a home away from home. Not something where you have a magic bullet where you can just say, do this and everything solves itself. This is going to be a very hard competition going forward. Make no mistake. But we're gearing up for it. We're not like retreating and going, oh, what's going on here? We're gearing up for it, and we're going to fight for our position in China. Don't do crazy things like start a fire sale to just protect some sales volume in some segment. That we won't do. But we will spend a tremendous amount of our time and resources to, on the one hand, defend, but also build the China position in the next 5 years. Cost, Harold, I'll leave it to you, but no stone unturned. Culture. I've been in this company for 32 years now. Is the culture the same today as it was in 1993? I would argue the answer to that is no. It has evolved significantly. There are some core traits that are the same, that maybe even come from our founding fathers. But when you question yourself and you do an inventory of yourself, We tend to spend, of course, 99.9% looking at the technical inventory and talking about technical solutions or how we're going to get the cost down. But you must also take time to do an inventory of your culture and ask yourself, do you have the fighting spirit to take on those new competitors, yes or no? Or are you too complacent just because you have had decades or 100 years plus of success? And it's very easy to fall into that trap. It's very easy to fall into the big company trap, yes, but. So a work stream that is equally important in next level performance is to do this inventory. And part of the way we're going to do this is not that I'm going to sit at home in the evening and write a manifesto and then come back to the company and tell the board first, listen, colleagues, this is what we need to do. Even though I have ideas of how I think we need to act and what fighting spirit is all about. And I believe I have that intrinsically in me. We're also going to let champions on all levels in the company rise and provide input. So if you call this like a soft work stream in the next level performance, maybe it is, but probably it's not. Because if we can change the culture, refine the culture to become even more performance-oriented, have the battle awareness. Yeah, the jungle is changing, survival of the fittest. It's not the biggest animal that survives. It is the one that is most able to adapt that survives. And when new animals come into that jungle, we have to adapt. So I think we have this insight. Turning a 160,000 people company completely around overnight is not the way it works, but we're going to work on this as well. And if we do it well, the new refined recipe of Mercedes-Benz, the new distilled version of it will be more attractive to our customers. We will launch a host of products that we believe will also drive growth. Through discipline, we can uphold financial resilience. Much of that financial resilience goes back into the technology, clearly, but also a healthy piece of it goes to our investors. Thank you very much, and I think I'm going to hand over to Marcus to give us more detail on the technical side.